Hi everyone, I'm Helen and I'm here today to show you how you can make really cool 3D visualizations like this using Carto Builder. So if you're not a Carto user, if you don't have a Carto account, head over to carto.com. You can sign up for a free 2-week trial and have access to all of this awesome functionality. So let's get going. So the first thing that you need to do is subscribe to the datasets that we need to create this map. So there's two datasets that really we need. The first one is a sort of bounding box dataset that shows the extent of the area that we're looking at. So for this, we're going to be using United States counties. The second that we need is our dataset that we're going to be using to create the 3D visualization. So for this, I'm going to be using unicast activity data, which is aggregated to a quad grid 17, which is about a 200 meter by 200 meter grid. This is a premium dataset available on Carto. So if you don't have access to this dataset, there are plenty of other ones that are free, that are available on Carto, that you can load into Carto yourself. Don't feel like you have to follow the footfall dataset if that's not relevant to what you're doing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this dataset on our data observatory. So you can see here we've got a few different variables. We've got a preview of what this data will look like. The variable that we're interested in for this data set is a variable called staying, which is the footfall data set. You can see here the number of people seen _in _area. So let's get going. Let's get on to the visualization. So this is what we're aiming for. This is the one I made earlier, but let's get rid of that so that we're working from scratch. So Carto is a SQL-based analytical platform, which means that all the analysis you're doing within Builder, there are other platforms available, but within Builder, we'll be using SQL. So I think a lot of people in geospatial kind of underestimate SQL, and I know I've definitely been one of them in the past, where you think it's really there for database management and organization and that sort of thing, which is kind of gives it a bit of a bad rep because it's actually got some fantastic analytical and visualization capabilities within it, which is really exciting. It's also a really, really quick language and it's really, really easy to use. I think it's very logical and intuitive. So let's bring in the code that we're going to be using. I can add this to the description so you can just copy and paste it over. So I'll talk through what this code does in a second. Let's just add it into the SQL console. So there's a couple of different components to this code. I'll talk through them now. It's actually a bit more straightforward than it looks like with all coding. So first of all, we have a couple of subqueries out here before we bring everything together. So first of all, we have our AOI subquery, which is our area of interest. And what this is it's just data from our USA county dataset, and we filtered that to where the name is San Francisco or San Mateo. And then we've just performed a union on these, so those two sort of dissolve together. So we've created our area of interest. Secondly, our second subquery is stats. So the way the datasets work in Carto when they're really, really big datasets is they're divided into two tables. So you have your geometry table, which is the sort of geometry, obviously, it's what you can map. And then the second table is the data table, the variables, which contains all the attribute information. And what we need to do at some point is join those two together. But firstly, we just need to do a bit of pre-processing because this is a really big data set and we want to limit it to just what we're interested in. So here we're taking that footfall data and we're just saying we only want this data where it's for the whole of the day rather than a specific period in the day, where it's for the whole week rather than a specific week, and it's for this time period as well in 2021. So now we've got our area of interest and we've got our footfall data. So now what we need to do is join that to our geometry data. So that's what this final query is here. So you can see here we're selecting data from our quad grid dataset, which is our geometry. Now, what we're doing is we're doing a left join to join that to our footfall data that we just did a subquery on. So now we've got those two joined together. And we're also bringing our area of interest here into this query to perform a filter where our area of interest contains the quad grids, which means we're only going to be looking at quad grid cells that fall within these two counties. We're also going to limit that to where our footfall data is greater than 0. So we're not going to look at locations where no one's visiting. So let's quickly run that query. Now you can see it's 49 gigabytes, which is quite a big query. But let's just run it now and it should only take, there we go, 1 second. Fantastic. So now you can see we've got that data loaded in. And what we can do now is get onto the fun bit, the visualization. So there's a few different steps that I'm going to talk you through to get a really great visualization out of this. So let's move into the layer panel, and we've got all our symbology options here. So in fact, first of all, let's just turn off blending modes, and I'll come back to that in a second. So first of all, let's just get rid of this sort of mint green stroke color. That's not really doing anything for us at the moment. And the first thing we're going to do is make this 3D. So we'll turn on the height here, and what this initially does as the default is applies a flat height to all of the grid cells across our area. What we want to do is turn on more options and change that so the height is dependent on the footfall variable. And you can see now, fantastic, we've got our 3D map. This value here is the vertical exaggeration. So at the moment it's 5. Let's turn that up to 20. So we've got a really nice, strong exaggeration. So already this is looking great. But the next thing we're going to do is toggle on our blending modes. Now, if you don't know too much about blending modes and haven't really worked with them, I've written a blog all about them. I'll put a link in the description. They affect how different colors on a map interact with each other. And they're a really, really powerful cartographic tool. I'm just going to turn on additive so you can see what I mean. So the additive blending mode takes different colors and the light values from different colors and basically adds those together. So the more overlap you have, the stronger the glow is, which is really, really, really powerful, as you can see. But what we've now got here is it's actually quite difficult to see much of the patterns beyond the very low and the very high. So we want to add a bit more nuance to this. So what we're going to do now is change the color scheme. So we can do that back on our layer panel options, and we can color based on field. So let's change that to staying, which is our footfall value. Now, the default is to add a sort of one of the default color ramps from Carto and have 6 different options on there, 6 different color bands, sorry. I personally think this is a bit too many when you're working with additive or any blending modes, because when you're working with blending modes, you already end up with a lot more color mixing and you end up with a lot more colors on there anyway. So what I like to do is knock this down to just 3, as we've got here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to choose the colors that we want. We're going to make a custom color ramp. Now what we need to do here, because we're working with the additive blending mode and we're also working with a dark base map, is we want to have our lower values, a darker color, and our higher values a lighter color. That's kind of the reverse of what you'd normally do with a lighter base map, but you'll see how it works in a second. So I've already pinpointed the colors that I want to use. So let me just copy and paste those over into here. So let me just click apply as I go so you can see how this is starting to work. Last one. Great. So now you can see how this is starting to work. We're really starting to be able to see those higher areas that we're mostly interested in. And then the final thing that we're going to do is change the color scale. So there are 3 color scale options available to you. First of all is quantile, and what this does is it divides the color bands based on each band having roughly the same number of features in each color band. So the bands will be uneven, but there'll be about the same number of squares here within each color band. The next option is quantize, which is sort of the equal interval type of color ramp, which basically takes the full range of your data. So from here it's 5 to 4,479 and cuts that into equal thirds. What we're going to do is a custom data classification, and the reason we're doing this rather than sticking to a more sort of scientific method is what we're really interested in here is the really high values. We want to be able to pinpoint them a lot easier rather than see a sort of general trend in the data. We're really interested in those high values. So what we're going to do is start to just play around with these values and see how we can get that to work. So let's change it so we've got a much smaller number of features in that top band and see how that works. So now you can see that's slightly changed how that's looking. We might maybe change that up to 3,000 just to get, again, that really more nuanced picture, which can be sometimes slightly difficult to achieve when you're using additive blending modes. And I think I'm quite happy with that. So let's just pan around and see how this is looking. What I really love about this is as you rotate, you sort of get this glow gradually fading through the picture. Okay, perfect. So I think I'm quite happy with that. I think that's roughly what we were aiming for. So I hope that was a helpful look at how you can really easily achieve these sorts of really cool looking, really impactful visualizations in Carto Builder. I would love to see if any of you are doing anything like this. If you could share with me at Helen Makes Maps on Twitter or Instagram, I'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.